Kia ora, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the Waterstone Election 2020 podcast and tonight's special TVNZ poll hot takes. I'm your host, editor of the Daily Blog, Martyn Bradbury, and joining me live from his Waterstone compound in Albany, libertarian political commentator and stuff columnist Damien Grant. 51 days until the 2020 New Zealand election, and TV3's poll earlier this week had Labour at a staggering 60% and National at a shocking 25%. Tonight's TVNZ poll has Labour 53%, National 32%, Greens 5%, New Zealand First 2%, ACT, you'll be so happy with this, 5%. Let's compare that with the TV3 poll. Labour 60%, National 25%, Greens 5.7%, New Zealand First 2%, and ACT 3.3%. Let's get into it. Labour 53%.
This is a huge result for National.
That's
fantastic.
Wow.
They have gone up 7 points.
Is that where you're going with this?
They've gone up 7 points in less than a week. 25 to 32. I think this is all credit to Judith Collins.
Well, let's just keep it on Labour. 53%. They've done so well. They can lose, and we've done the numbers. They could lose another 6 points, and at 47% still gain with the MMP redistribution of votes. They could still make a majority, 50%. Government.
And I think at this point, because I said before, you know, the two things that need to happen to unseat
yes.
Labour, a COVID outbreak and economic collapse.
Yes.
But I think this close to the election, I actually think that even if those two things were to happen now, it's just too hard for National to claw back, because you're talking about what, 300,000 voters currently identifying with Labour that would need to shift back, and I can't see it happening. And even if, because the National's other problem is if they're going to pull those voters back.
Yes.
I think the most likely thing is if things went bad from Labour in the next 5-6 weeks here, some of those people may be disillusioned to not vote. To get them to come back to positively vote for Judith Collins, it's getting really, really
19% of National voters, 19, almost 20% of National Party voters called Jacinda Ardern the saviour of New Zealand. 20% of National voters considered Jacinda the saviour. That was the actual specific term offered to them, and 20% of them. I put to you that there has been a solidarity created by this unique event which has changed the psychological uptake of the electorate. This is a seismic, generational shift we're seeing, Mr. Grant.
Do you know what hurts me?
So many things. Children's laughter, sunlight, butterflies.
Well, sunlight.
What today is burning you?
I think you might be right. I think your analysis, which you've been pushing for a couple of months now,
many months.
I actually think you might be right. I think there might have been a psychological shift in the electorate.
Right.
And I don't know what National can do about it. I mean, something interesting Paul Goldsmith has been pushing quite quietly but consistently about not allowing the debt level to blow out. Right. So they're saying, hey, we want to try and get down.
Yes. Thomas Coughlin did a very, very, very damaging piece on this. Real hit job.
So as an accurate reporting, Paul Goldsmith for what he said. Yeah. But we're talking about. Paul Goldsmith, is talking about 30%.
That's right. So $80 billion over 8 years, $8 billion less a year for 10 years. Do you think the public want to hear that?
No.
They don't want to hear $8 billion out of public services a year, eh?
And part of it is people have seen this massive gorge of money.
Yep.
The spigot has just been opened. And it's like, well, okay, once you've crossed the Rubicon, it doesn't seem to matter. The price.
Ask the Americans. $1 trillion deficit. They don't care.
And nobody cares. And so this is a real problem for the Conservative side of the aisle.
Yep.
If even your own voters do not care about debt, and they don't see it as a problem, and this whole narrative about low interest rates. And here's the other thing. You run up $140 billion worth of debt.
Yep.
If the cost of servicing that debt's 1%, you're talking about $1.4 billion, which is a rounding error. So this thing is sustainable over the medium to potentially long term. I mean, there are massive economic consequences of screwing with the financial markets.
But people don't care about debt when they've felt vulnerable, right? They don't care. Keep me safe.
No, and
someone else is picking up the tab. I don't care.
And what they won't see the economic cost, right?
No,
so you have a look in Japan where standard theory is that they have lost 2 to 3 decades of economic opportunity, but you don't see that. What you see right now is I have a job.
Yeah.
And I don't care if my lifestyle in 10 years is going to be lower than what it would be if I had to take the hit. And I just, looking at it from the conservative side of the aisle, it's hard to understand how we can get back to the electorate and tell them that what they are doing is madness.
Well, let's get into that. National, 32%. Judith Collins said that if Simon Bridges ever got under 35%, he's gone. She's at 32%. Crusher Collins has not been the great circuit breaker that National were hoping for, has she?
No, because they're exactly where they were when they dumped Simon Bridges.
How insane is that?
Those were exactly where the numbers were. So I don't know what National can do at this point other than just accept the loss that's coming. They're gonna have to try and save the furniture. I don't know what the strategy is other than maybe try and salvage some of the better MPs.
The 32 billion that they want to spend on infrastructure that they haven't costed, and the 8 billion they want to save a year. Those messages, how is that resonating? How is that resonating with the electorate?
I actually think we are now talking about the 2023 election. I think that's where National needs to start thinking. And that's where they've had quite a bit of a clean out. Amy Adams, Nikki Kay, Hamish Walker.
Huge clean out of talent. But that's a lot of talent that they needed. That's just gone. Who within National can step up in that area?
Well, this is where National needs to be thinking. They need to be thinking now about the 2023 election.
Yep.
And so they need to be thinking who are the people that they're going to put into those electorates that in 3 years' time are going to be potential cabinet ministers, because they are looking at losing somewhere a quarter of their MPs.
Right.
So they've really got to make sure that those MPs that they retain and the new MPs that they bring in are going to be the core of a potential comeback in 2023, because that's what National needs to start thinking about.
Greens, 5%. They are going backwards. They are in trouble. I put to you, as I've been arguing for some time, Greens aren't going to make a 5%. Their middle-class woke identity politics is so alienating to the majority of voters outside the Wellington little clique who have them held hostage now. They're so alienating outside that they've lost. I mean, this result at 5% would be lower than their disastrous 2017 crash of 6.4%. Chloe Swarbrick's their only chance left now, isn't it?
And because we were talking about this before, and you raised a really funny point. So it all comes down to Auckland Central, right? So the Greens are 50-50 whether they get over a 5%, so they need to win Auckland Central. And Helen White is not going quietly into the night.
She's so not. She wants to be in there, doesn't she? But on these, on 53%, she'd get in. She'd get in, right? She'd actually get in.
And there'd be 3 or 4 MPs underneath her. So the Auckland Central has a possibility of a twofer. But so the question then becomes, Labour Party voters in there may well vote strategically, as we've seen happen in Epsom, but they're not all going to do that. And so your suggestion, which was malevolently brilliant.
It was, because I'm malevolently brilliant.
Yes. So Bomber's suggestion was, I was suggesting nationally to put in somebody really solid to hold on to the seat. But Bomber's suggestion was no. Put in some, put in the dirt monster, some schmuck, some loser. And let them bomb and have
and actually get the National voters to vote for Helen White to block the Greens, right?
Maybe Judith Collins and Chloe Swarbrick need to have a cup of tea somewhere in Ponsonby. You heard it here first on the Daily Blog.
New Zealand First, 2%. He's gone, isn't he? He's gone.
He's not coming back.
I've done the breakdown of previous voting blocks. Last election, he was at 11% before going into the 2017 election. Previous to that, they were in 8% territory. Previous to that, I think they were almost 6 and point something. They've never come back from this low. It's over, isn't it?
Painful chemotherapy that this country has gone through
for 27 years. For 27 years
of this tumour. finally, we appear to be at the end of the road.
Shane Jones is his only chance in Northland, isn't it?
forget it.
Are you
Not gonna
saying Matt King will take him?
No,
in Northland?
No, Shane Jones has none of the charisma or mana of
Matt King?
Winston Peters.
Oh, okay, true,
Sorry.
sure.
And there is just something about him. When you see him, he just, rightly or wrongly, he just oozes something unsavory.
A smug certitude of his own. He speaks about himself in the third person so much. He's actually become three-dimensional. He just comes out of the Shane Jones is very Shane Jones about being so Shane Jones. He does that, and it's a bit off-putting, isn't it?
And they don't appear to have. So we were speculating before about whether they were going, they were attacking the Pakistani students, or whether they had some form of a strategy.
Yeah.
They seem to be pivoting a little bit at the moment, saying beating up on the Greens is a bit of a show, and talking about the woke thing, but it's not enough.
No.
And those voters are clearly more attracted to the New Conservative, because there's not a lot of difference right now between New Zealand First and the New Conservatives.
Let's talk about your favourite party at the end, ACT. You and I, at the beginning of this year, had a drink with David Seymour, and I said to him, it's free speech or nothing, baby. And he kind of went, oh, we're still at 1%. Now sitting at 5%. How do you feel? It's your party.
It's not my party. I don't belong to the ACT party.
Sure, but you're a supporter.
I'm
a well-wisher,
a fellow traveller,
a fellow traveller. Although they've taken quite a side off into the weird gun nut stuff. 5%. What does that mean for ACT?
Well, of course we have David Seymour,
yes,
Brooke Van Velden, Nicole, AK-47 McKee.
AK-47 McKee, yep.
And so I was looking at number 4, 5 and 6.
Yeah.
Okay, Chris Bailey, he's a former policeman, runs a pub. Simon Court's an engineer. James McDowell, immigration lawyer. I don't know. I feel we may have missed the boat a little bit here. It's going to be really interesting to see how. I hope that these people will do what we want them to do.
And surely isn't that the problem? Because we ACT, and looking at those candidates, they're very single issue people. Very firm thoughts on 1080. And outside of that, it's where you like.
I think that's unfair. I mean, I think Nicole McKee certainly is her primary focus. Is that, but we don't know a lot about the ones.
Is that a missed opportunity? I mean, at 5%, this is the highest ACT has been in a decade. Yeah. When was the last time they were this high? Here was an opportunity for David to be able to bring in some real intellectual heavyweights. Are you telling me, outside of you and David Seymour, ACT have no more intellectual heavyweights? Is that it?
No. I think the problem ACT have got is that because we've been around below the margin of error for so long.
Right.
That encouraging people of calibre to step into the arena and go on the list has been hard, because what's the point?
Sure.
And so I think part of the issue is when the candidates were being selected 6 months ago, the prospect of them becoming MPs was pretty small. Now all of a sudden it's real, and so I'm not too sure. But look, I don't know these people, right? So I have no idea.
Isn't that concerning? You're Mr. Right Wing.
Not necessarily, but I don't know. But also, I mean, the whole idea of the philosopher king is potentially rubbish. I mean, you have a look at some of the really effective politicians inside both Labour and National, and these are not necessarily people who would know their Bastiat from a bagel. So I don't think it necessarily
nightmare
really
scenario. National starts.
Labour has potentially the same problem, right? Because Labour probably, did a lot of work on the first 50, 55 MPs.
Oh, I read Finn's post in Dargaville would get in on the Labour Party list right now.
Exactly. So probably both ACT and Labour would like it if their votes kind of stabilise where they are a bit less.
Nightmare scenario. National start to drift to 30. Paul Goldsmith starts looking at his position on that seat on the listings and goes, ooh, it's getting a bit close there. It's getting a bit close. I think I'll take Epsom back, thanks. I'll take Epsom back. Does Paul Goldsmith have the ruthlessness and the sheer desperation to go, oh shit, no, I'll have it back, thanks. Okay. And screws David Seymour over?
He would lose. That's National's problem.
Would he though? It's pretty thin.
The reason why National will not go for Epsom is they are terrified of the humiliation of a defeat. That's the problem.
You don't think Paul Goldsmith is desperate enough to hold on to his seat? If it cruises to 30, he's going to go, I might not get in.
But then what happens if Goldsmith says, right, that's it, I'm not going to pull down my billboards, I'm going for gold.
I'm going for it. I'm absolutely going for it this time.
Not intended, but it's a good one.
Yep.
So he goes for gold.
Yep.
And Seymour still pulls it out of the
Okay, well, yeah, but he's gone anyway. At 30%, he's gone anyway, right? May as well roll the dice. Roll those dice. Roll those dice. Nightmare scenario. It's one that I'm desperately seeding around National Party people right now that they should be considering. Just to,
but mind you, we're going to see how good National Party voters are in Auckland Central because, guys, we need you to vote for Holland.
But you want Chloe to win.
That's true, I do.
Because it would annoy the hell out of the other Green Party.
Can we have Chloe win in Auckland Central and the Greens otherwise out?
If only. Our next election podcast is Tuesday next week. We'll be going weekly through till the end of the election campaign. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. See you Tuesday.